Welcome back, everyone, to the Reading by Candlelight book club at Molly's Cottage. I'm here with Luke Johnson, debut author of King Tide, which features in the August crime fiction book box. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you, Fiona. Lovely to be here. Been looking forward to this.
Now, before we begin, here's a little bit about Luke. He's from Ocean Grove on the Bellarine Peninsula in Victoria, and he is married with two daughters and trained as a physiotherapist. And he was the physio for the Geelong Football Club, but supports the Western Bulldogs. And true story, I actually have a photo of me holding the Premiership Cup the Bulldogs won in 2016.
Oh, really? I was at the grand final, but I didn't get to hold the cup. Lucky you. Are you a Bulldogs fan, Fiona?
No, no,
Oh, that's not fair.
I'm so sorry, but I actually worked in a school where one of the teachers there, her son was a physio for the
Ah,
dogs.
there you
And
go. That's a
yeah,
great story.
so he brought the cup into the school and everyone got to have their photo with it.
Fantastic.
Now, Luke had three novels in a drawer, but during the COVID pandemic, he began writing in earnest and won the Bellarine Short Story Competition in 2021. And a lot of debut authors tell me in interviews that they really hit their stride during COVID. Was this the same for you?
It was. Yeah, I think just having the time, like we physiotherapists were one of the lucky ones who never stopped working at all. But there was just so much spare time without the kids' sport happening. The kids were at home, more school pickups and things weren't a thing. So you just stacked more time and probably the emotional intensity, I reckon, of that time brought things out that perhaps otherwise wouldn't have been revealed for me, or at least as quickly and as many of them at that time. So yeah, there's no question in my mind that was a lucky break as a writer in a sense.
And your debut, King Tide, was published last month with a firm press and Simon and Schuster, and has one of my favorite plot devices: alternating dual timelines. I love them so much. And it showcases a crime amid a mystery, and as the tides shift throughout the story, it exposes the darker undercurrents of small town life. And are you able to give us a quick spoiler-free pitch of your book?
Sure. So yeah, as you say, Fiona, it is a small town Australian suburban crime, I call it, with a particular focus on the kind of fragility and intensity of youth was the aim. So in a narrative sense, the setup is a king tide washes through the small town of Lagunas Bay, a fictional town on the west coast of Victoria, and that king tide washes away some of the dunes and reveals the body of a girl who went missing from the town 3 years prior. Her name's Hayley Rose. And as the detectives start to investigate what happened around her disappearance, they find that her last known boyfriend was the local kind of golden boy, whose name is Tate Moon. And in a very short space of time, they discover that a year before Hayley went missing, that Tate's younger brother Ben also went missing in different but just as mysterious circumstances, and his body had never been found. So that's the kind of the setup for the story.
And I've heard your book called Great Ocean Road Noir, which is
Hmm.
like a completely new genre. What sparked the idea for King Tide?
Yeah, so two main things actually. So first of all was a camping trip to the Grampians in 2021. We went on a few hikes with the kids, and it's just such a beautiful kind. It's a place that just makes you feel so much. And one of the things I was sitting in the caravan one night, looking up at Mount William and thinking, what if some teenagers got lost up there tonight? It gets dark early. It's so cold. So the initial idea of teenagers being in the bush and something happening was kind of the real initial spark. And the second part that kind of brought the other main part of the narrative together was where I live in Ocean Grove. There is a camp just off the main street where every summer a religious group come and inhabit. It's their land, like inhabit it for 5 or 6 weeks every summer. And otherwise, the rest of the year, I walk there every night, walk my dog through. And every for those 5 or 6 weeks, you can't walk through. But just after they'd left, must have been in early 2022. I was walking through, just kind of imagining what those weeks had been like, especially for the younger people, the youth that had been there, perhaps with their parents, perhaps not always with their parents. Just how the kind of hierarchies form in younger groups, especially in camps where it's not a normal environment for them, and how the sort of pressures of being together in situations outside school and sport and home, and how the kind of line between friendship and love and things for teenagers can become blurred in those years, especially when you're off the leash a bit more. So that was kind of the second part that formed, and I saw there was going to be a relevance between the two settings to be able to craft some sort of a story.
That's really interesting. And I mean, your background's in physiotherapy and obviously sport. What kind of research did you need to do to write King Tide?
So there wasn't a lot. I did have to research things like, and I really enjoyed researching things like, if the body had been there for X number of years, what would it look like to be realistic? And I needed it needed to be able to be recognizable. But I wanted there to be the maximum gap. To let other things have occurred for the other protagonists, especially growing from 15 to 18 or 19-year-olds. So, and to come back to your idea kind of the multiple points, multiple time frames. So initially, this had four different time frames, and
Oh,
and in the editing, and I love different time frames too because they give you a mechanism to let readers do some work and anticipation,
mm.
and without having to use exposition for everything, you can have things happen and let time do the heavy lifting between chapters. It was edited back to two time frames just to decrease the complexity and things. But yeah, I feel like the settings were important, and the idea of the camp was kind of really prevalent throughout the whole construction of the story.
Wow. Now, was there anything surprising you uncovered when you were doing the research?
Not well in a good way, yeah. So the research of decomposition that depended on temperature and dirt quality and evaporability, all those kinds of scientific things was really kind of cool to learn about. I didn't use it, but I might use it in the future to discover the age of somebody. There's a thing called pulp chamber ratios in a dental sense that has forensic medical people estimate age if they're not able to do it otherwise in any other sense. And there was something else that I researched that was kind of cool. Oh, the forensic part. As a physiotherapist, when we trained, it's a bit macabre, but we dissected a body in a group over 18 months to learn the anatomy. And so, I've always,
You're
even
a
before we
therapist, really?
yeah, they don't do it anymore. They have a thing called wet specimen where they'll bring in pre-dissected parts. But when I went through in the late 90s, you were allocated a cadaver, a body that had been donated to science. And I love anatomy. Anatomy to me holds all the kind of the answers to issues that we see as physios. So when I was kind of doing the forensic medicine scenes with Dr. Wang, I could have written them forever. I love those scenes, and I love being able to use detail that is accessible and interesting to the reader who maybe isn't medically trained, but also really accurate. So I'm hoping at some stage there might be readers who have an interest in that who contact me to say, I love the fact that you got this part right, because I went to great lengths to make sure that everything that was there was completely and utterly accurate.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, my understanding is that your title wasn't your first choice, but this title and the imagery it suggested inevitability and change and hidden things being revealed. So, what was it called before, and what was the reason for the change?
Yeah, so it was called The Beautiful Lie. And for those who haven't read it without giving anything away, there are one or more significant lies that are told from a very kind-hearted, positive point of view, but they're lies nevertheless. So that was my title initially, but effectively, as it became obvious it was going to be in the crime genre when it was acquired, that it was seen as a bit too general fiction or even literary fiction, a bit too soft, essentially, and so all of us, myself and Dan, my agent, and Ruby Ashby Orr at a firm,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Laura Franks all went through a series of titles to try and get the imagery, as you say, and to have something connected to the landscape we thought was really important. And there were five suggestions that we ratified it down to, and pretty much everybody chose King Tide for the exact reasons you've said, Fiona. I think the king aspect, because there is obviously discovery and a kind of theme of masculinity felt like it
Yeah.
was really relevant too. So yeah, that title, I think it was Ruby's in the end, but I think when everybody read that one, they universally loved it. That's what we went with. And the cover was designed by Deb Parry, who I haven't met yet, but I'm really keen to because I do. It's so nice to get a lot of feedback from people who have read the book who will contact me about the story, but they often make reference to the cover and how important that was to them. So it's so lovely that it's all come together like that.
Yes, the cover is beautiful. They've done a really great job on it.
Yeah, it
Now,
really stands out. Yeah.
yes, definitely. I am going to cough. Sorry, everyone at home. I am sick, but I will edit that out. Now,
Have a drink. That's it.
now, crime fiction often shines a light on the community, its strengths, its secrets. How did you balance portraying the setting authentically while still creating enough distance to tell a fictional story?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because the setting is so important, like it is for a lot of novels, full stop, and crime in particular. Yeah, I felt like the two places, the Grampians and Port Fairy, which is the fictionalized town that has become Lagunas Bay, were so familiar, particularly Port Fairy to me. We camped down there a lot. And it was really well, I don't know if it's easy to capture a small town, but it's easy to, or it's clear if you recognize if you have captured it, kind of in its best and its worst form. So, yeah, the landscape is really important. I think the biggest thing for me when I was writing it was not so much to have them separated or contrasting, but uh, part of Port Fairy I've always felt is that sometimes when the weather is at its worst, it seems at its most authentic as a town. It just really suits the township. Um, and so I was always mulling over, you know, if the more blustery, angry, volatile aspect of the landscape is its true form, do we see the same in the characters? You know, when is their real authentic self revealed? So, yeah, I think I really was always conscious of trying to keep that in mind and not so much use it, but certainly play them off each other and have the landscape almost as a character. But having said that, the characters themselves were always my focus, and so it was only ever the smaller of the two aspects that I was worried about. But hopefully it comes across that the landscape plays a role in the mood and in the kind of decisions and environment that the individuals find themselves in.
Yeah, it definitely does. And you've mentioned, misogynistic aspects and things like that. What themes or questions were you most interested in exploring in your writing?
Yeah, so definitely the a real main driver for me, with the essence of the story for me when I was writing it was the comparison and kind of contrast of loyalty to a person, particularly for young people who tend to be fiercely black and white. We've all been that person. And then you're presented with new information or another person, in the case of Tate with Haley Rose coming into the mix, playing off against Briley, who perhaps he was infatuated with before that. So I think that kind of line between friendship and love as well in that sense was really important. I think we've all felt that at some stage in our lives, and you don't always know, particularly as a younger person. In fact, even as an older person, you don't always know where that line is. Yeah, so loyalty to a person contrasted with faith to a belief system in the case of Connor McIntyre and Bonnie Rose, Haley's grandmother, who's her guardian. So I think those things fascinate me to think that people can be absolutely and devoutly devoted to a belief that is really admirable and honorable, but you know, sometimes things happen around them where their devotion to that belief has them blinded to what they really should be seeing. And so, and I think the same can happen with loyalty to a person too. So that those two, loyalty versus faith and friendship versus love, were really important. And probably the other thing, again, that fascinates me as a physio, I talk to a lot of people, have done for 26 years, and the universality of family and family problems and kind of generational issues that persist and are propagated. You know, the full truth isn't always told. and it almost kind of informs that next generation that it's okay not to tell the full truth if it's just easier and it saves problems and conflict and things. So yeah, that was probably the other main one, was to kind of display how that can again be really well intentioned, but probably doesn't always lead to the best type of outcomes for the various generations, was important to explore.
Yes, and you did such a great job with it. But as I've mentioned, I love a dual timeline. So, what I want to know is, was it hard to keep track of the alternating timelines? And you said that you did four, and now there's two. So, did you write them separately and then weave them, or did you write in the order that the readers experience them?
Yeah, no, more the latter, to be honest. I write them as I go, and I've always I have hundreds and hundreds of notes before I start a manuscript about character and or about relationships or about setting or about plot, obviously. So I've always got a pretty good idea about where I want it to go in the end. I kind of have, maybe like a lot of writers, I'm sure, four or five main points I want to hit. But I do find, so part of the different time frames all through every manuscript I've ever written is based around the fact that I tend to write in blocks just around work and accessibility and things. So it's easy initially, before I became a bit more proficient, the earlier manuscripts I would write in a block of a time frame, and then I could come in 2 months later, not having done any in the meantime, and write a block in that time frame and not have to worry about them kind of sounding a bit different or whatever it might have been. So once I kind of got my head around that and got practiced at it, I now write them concurrently. So I write chapter after chapter and generally go then and now, but not always. But yeah, I just love the fact you can infer something in a now chapter and have the reader kind of, the interest is piked or they're aware something needs to happen. So you can kind of build anticipation but not give away who's going to do something or how they're going to do it. So I find it's just a really effective tool to be able to yeah, create that without having to create a lot of exposition. This has more dialogue than the other things that I've written. But I tend to not write a lot before, but the dialogue even can just, give those little inferences. And in the then chapters, you can have things that are slowly revealing, of course, why someone's behaving in a certain way towards a certain person now. So I'm like you, I love reading those things. I guess we write what we know, we write what we love. So yeah, it just works for me. I find it's easier and kind of cleaner to create the interest in characters and plot.
Yes, and it's just so much fun to read. Now, which character did you enjoy writing the most and why?
I love that question. I would say I would say probably Luther, actually. So
Ooh.
Luther, yeah, for those who haven't read the book, Luther, there's three teenagers that are very, very good friends, two boys and a girl, Tate and Luther as the boys and Briley as the girl. And Luther is kind of he's the bad egg. He's the guy. He's been brought up in a terrible household with domestic violence and alcoholism, and
Mm.
he kind of so he was destined to be, when I started, the sort of, the thorn amongst the roses and the one who was going to cause all the trouble. And in a way he does. But the more I wrote him and the more, for the reader's sake, I was exploring the idea of, rather than, and not excusing his behavior, but explaining his behavior and the way he sees the world, um, you kind of get to understand how somebody can end up in that scenario without really realizing it. And not that I felt sorry or pity for him, but when I had that understanding, and Luther, he's craving, so his role in his peer group is this big, angry, violent kid, and it gives him a role and it gives him value. But
Mm.
underneath it, I think he's really craving anything but there's
Yeah.
sort of, he doesn't have another role and he doesn't feel internally like he has any other value, and it would be a big jump for him to try and be someone else, so keeps reverting back to that role. And it is kind of sad. It's kind of there's a despondency about his situation, and he wasn't based on anybody that I know, but probably when I thought about it after, like, he's just a conglomerate of all of the kids, I guess, that were around me growing up. Not that there were that many, but I had enough of them who were, and I didn't understand at the time. They lived with their grandfather, or they were very, very poor, or there was violence and alcoholism in their house, and there wasn't in mine. So when you don't know what you don't know, at the time, you can't really understand them. So yeah, the more I wrote Luther, and the more it dawned on me what an awful situation people like that are born into. I really I tried really hard to show what he was clamoring to be, but just maybe couldn't achieve. So yeah, I really enjoyed writing Luther.
Oh, that's really lovely to hear too, because I think that, he's a really important character. So
Mm,
great that you connected with him on that level.
yeah.
Has the process of publishing your first novel been what you imagined?
Yeah, I guess it has. I didn't know what to expect. Well, in some ways, no. So I'd say the time frame when it was first acquired by a firm, and about this time last year, I was talking to Martin Hughes. This was about the time frame, so that was all expected. Dan Pilkington, my agent, is so good at explaining and kind of caressing me through each hurdle and each thing that I come up against that I'm not sure of, or perhaps get a bit not even annoyed with, just a bit confused with, I guess. But it hasn't been that much. I mean, a firm have been so fantastic to work with, and very informative at every step. The one thing I can honestly say, hand on heart, though, not having a history in any writing education or in the industry in any way, shape, or form, I didn't know what editing was. Um, and it was an absolute shock to the system. Very necessary. That's where, the time frames were compressed and cleaved. Multiple points of view were rearranged into singular points of view, and a whole lot of the technical things that I had never considered. Um, but yeah, so that part was, I must say, I didn't know what a structural edit was. I wouldn't have known if someone told me. And I was in Mildura, our daughters swim a fair bit, and we were up at some country championships in Mildura when Laura Franks sent me the email saying, Luke, here is your manuscript back. Take a seat, take a breath, and kind of read through it. And it was the biggest emotional hurdle, I think. Yeah, I was just gutted and despondent and annoyed. And I kind of wrote a very kind email to Laura a few days later using those kinds of words. And she said, that's how you should be. That's how everybody feels. You just didn't know what you're in for. So I didn't know. I loved it in the end because it made me rewrite enough of it and gave me the comfort that I thought we had got rid of bits that were not so much important to the story. They were just really nice bits of writing. So in
Yeah.
the end, they needed to go. But I like pretty writing. I like things like Kazuo Ishiguro and Tim Winton and Kerouac, and so it was great that we nailed it back, and I had to get it back to where it ended up because I found pretty writing, good writing came back to me when it needed to, and I didn't. I guess when I look back, I didn't have the confidence that would necessarily happen once we got rid of the things that had already come out. So it was the singular best thing that could have happened, but it was very, very confronting.
Yes, and I mean, all writers have to learn to kill their darlings, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Yeah. I'm there now. I can say honestly, there can't be a hurdle as big as that coming up for me in my writing life, I don't think ever again.
You've done it once.
Yeah, that's it.
What do you hope readers feel when they turn the final page?
Yeah, I hope they feel a bit sad that they won't get to keep reading the characters, not so much the plot, although that too, but mainly the characters. So I guess a connection. I hope they felt a real connection to a person or a situation or a feeling or the way someone said something or didn't say something. Just a really deep connection with something like that they would like to know more about that they won't and can't, I guess. Yeah, I hope they feel um, like there's been a bit of escapism when I'm reading. I like it to be absorbing enough to have forgotten about all our normal worldly worries and the worldly worries at the moment. So I'd like them to think, oh my God, I'm back in the real world, I guess. And probably some understanding in the Luther thing, and even to a small degree for the Conor McIntyre role, who's not a very likable guy, but yeah, if there can have been parts of the book that have them just reconsider, when they see that snarly young man on the street who isn't necessarily a great person at that point in their life, that there may be reasons, and perhaps they have a better understanding of how someone comes to be there rather than being a nuisance and an obstacle in their life on that day. So an understanding, I guess, too.
Oh, that's lovely. I really like that. Now that King Tide is out in the world, what's next? Can you tell us about your next project?
Yeah, well, there's sort of a couple that I've got. So I have King Tide is, as it turns out, so it's the fourth of the four manuscripts that I had written to that point. So the third one, in a way, is a prequel or the first in
Ooh.
this series. So I'd like to pursue that. So obviously we're sort of thinking about that at the moment and looking at whether it's got the potential and the capacity to be something that's worthy of publication. And I am, 90 plus percent of the way through a manuscript that comes after King Tide. So in that sense, with the two detectives, with Lewis and McCoy, just down the road a little bit in another fictional little town. So, and I'm really, really loving writing that. I feel like, I know the characters so well
Mm.
from the three manuscripts now that there's an ease of writing. I'm having to kind of be careful to stick to the narrative kind of strictly rather than exploring backstories and things that won't be as important in the end. So yeah, there's definitely options. Look, I love writing so much. So I've written, yeah, effectively five manuscripts in the last 6 years, including this one. And I feel like right now I could do it forever. And I'm sure there will come a time where that's not true. But, I have some clients here at my workplace ask sometimes that kind of question. And I kind of find myself saying, well, look, I'm going to be writing anyway. I just love it so much, and I feel like I've really found my voice that it'll be written. It's just a matter of whether everyone else gets to read it or not. Only time will tell. But there will definitely be more made available in terms of publishers having a look. So I hope that it comes about at some stage. That would be nice.
Well, I've heard nothing but like good things and read nothing but good things. I mean, one of the best compliments I heard was like you were a cross between Jane Harper and Tim Winton. I mean, gosh,
Yeah,
that's
it's a
amazing.
nice thing. I think someone called it the mongrel child of Joan Harper and Tim Winton, which is probably well, it's lovely to hear. I mean, Mark Brandy and Mark Smith and Inga Simpson have all offered amazing comments. So, when I was just the guy, as I still am, writing in my study or in my caravan or in the back of my car, looking over the bluff at Barwon Heads or the pier here at Geelong, like for one person of any standing to have ever read a manuscript and enjoyed it was always going to be enough. So for those sort of people to give some really kind words, and for readers out there to have read it and be mostly kind of being kind and positive about it. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just been such a nice time, and I'm just trying to enjoy it for what it is. And I love doing these things because I do find the more I talk about it, the more I even learn about what I was trying to say and what I'd like people to think. So it's lovely to have these conversations.
That's great. Now, quick last one. The Bulldogs win another flag in the next 5 years, yes or no?
I'd love to say yes. I'm going to say yes if they find a new coach. And if Luke Beveridge ever watches this, I love Bevo. I think he's fantastic. He obviously won us the flag in 2016, but yes, I think we need a change. I think we've got a fantastic list, but I just don't feel like the dynamic is there. So fingers crossed. Having said all that, Fiona, I wouldn't be betting much money on it either way.
Well, that's time on our interview. Thank you all for coming along tonight and watching us live. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode, and let us know what you think in the Reading by Candlelight Facebook group or on socials. And I'd like to thank our author, Luke Johnson, for chatting with me and for being Reading by Candlelight's August crime thriller book box author.
Thank you, Fiona. Thanks for having the chat and thanks for having me as part of the book box. It's been a great little process.
Wishing everybody happy reading and goodbye until the next Reading by Candlelight book club.